CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Malawi's President Professor Peter Mutharika took over office in 2014, inheriting an economy which he described as tattered and bankrupt. Soon after assuming power, President Mutharika made a rallying call to Malawians to join and rebuild in the midst of dwindling donor support and gaping budget deficits. So how has Malawi fared 4 years on? Well, I sat down with President Mutharika to get his insight into this question and more. From the Kamuzu Palace in Lilongwe, Malawi, I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Malawi sits on the southeastern edge of Africa with a population of an estimated 17 million. It is largely agriculturally based, even as it seeks to diversify its economy, attract foreign investment, and boost cooperation with the global community. Before we begin our interview with the country's president, let's first take a look at the state of Malawi today.
When President Peter Mutharika came to power in 2014, he inherited a country mired in the Cashgate scandal, rising inflation, and the withdrawal of donor funding, which left a 40% gap in the country's budget. Against this backdrop, Mutharika's government implemented stringent public finance management. These measures helped Malawi back on its feet and gained applause from international finance organizations for its resilience. Malawi today aspires to attain a middle-income status by 2020, but significant challenges still stand in its way. Agriculture currently contributes to 80% of Malawi's exports, but this sector is highly vulnerable to the recurrent droughts and floods. To achieve its Vision 2020, Malawi must diversify its economy. The country is now focusing on developing tourism, realizing industrialization, and revamping its mining sectors. Malawi has also sought to boost trade with the international community, with China being among its top trading partners. The country's fortune relies on a number of other factors, among them growing the energy sector and improving the country's infrastructure. But the president is confident that these hurdles can be addressed under his leadership.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time again. Now, you took over 4 years ago against the backdrop of a lot of flooding, and then there was famine, you had food insecurity, you had no donor support for your budget, your economy was near collapse. But 4 years down the line, today you're looking at economic growth of up to 6% in 2018, as well as a rebound of your economy, so to speak. So how have you managed to do it?
Yes, all right. As you know, when you first came here, it was a few months after I took over, and the economy really had collapsed. That was after the famous Cashgate, which was the looting of the treasury by some civil servants and some business people. Inflation was very high, 42%. Interest rates were 45%, inflation 34%. Foreign reserves were the lowest in history at 1 month import cover. It was a challenge, so we came in and we decided we were going to do a number of things. First, to cut spending. First, reduce the size of the cabinet from the normal 40, 45 to only 18 ministers, 20 including the president and vice president. So that saved a lot of money and reduced the number of vehicles that ministers ride. Now they're riding Prados instead of Mercedes-Benzes, so we saved money. We cut back on travel. For example, when I go to a function, only the line minister goes with me, not the whole cabinet and their supporters and civil servants. That saved a lot of money. Domestic travel, international travel, we cut back. Ministers can only travel 3 times a year overseas on government-funded trips. So we have saved a lot of money that way, and we set a target of reducing inflation, which we did through tight monetary policy. Inflation has now gone down to single digit. Interest rates have now gone down. And our import cover is now 6 months, the highest in history of this country, and the budget has stabilized for 2 years. So we set those targets and we have made them, provided enough food, made sure there was enough food because food affects inflation in this country. So we did that and also make sure that we instituted policies to attract foreign investment. Made it much easier to invest in this country. Before it would take about 65 days to get a license. Now you can get it within 5 days if it's a simple investment through a one-stop center. So we did all those things and also introduced skills training, massive skills training at both technical but also university level. So we're training our own people who are already now creating jobs, employing others. So we did those, and now I'm glad to say the economy is now stabilized. It's set to grow. It's supposed to be the fastest growing in the SADC region. This year, average 3.9. And I'm told next year by the economists that we could reach 6%.
So when you saved a lot of money with your austerity measures, the ones you've talked about, though, what were your priority areas? Where did you put your money as priorities?
That's a good question. We put money in, obviously, in agriculture, as an important sector. We put money in education, the skills training I've talked about. We put money in health, nutrition. For the first time, we have a national cancer hospital. So those are areas, and of course, infrastructure. We put a lot of money in transport. So that build new roads and make sure that we can transport produce from the rural areas where 90% of people are to urban areas. And that has made a lot of difference. So those are sort of things we have done and continue to do.
So your budget as well at the time you took over, it was, you had a donor aid freeze then at the time, but also previously though your budgetary support from the donors was about 40%, but over the last several years now you've managed to balance your budget without using donor support. How has that worked?
Yeah, it's very interesting actually. When I took over, I thought that maybe it would be self-sustaining within 5 to 7 years, and we're getting 40%. I'm sorry, our budget was getting 40%. 40% of the budget that recurrent budget was from the donors, and of course it was cut before I took over after Cashgate. So we came in without that support, and we had to find a way to meet that gap. So as I said earlier, reduced spending was one thing we did. Proper collection. We made sure that we empower the Malawi Revenue Authority to collect more revenue and collect loopholes where there were leakages and wastages and so forth. We made sure that happened, introduce a new control system in the Treasury so that there is no waste. And we have managed, through that we have managed to I think this year we have funded 90% of the budget from local resources, and I think borrowing about 10% of it. We hope in a year or so that would be 100%, but it's all domestic resources. And we're glad we have learned how to do it without budget support. We planned to do it anyway, but we thought it would come a little bit later, but not by design, by circumstances. It happened, and I'm glad that we're managing to do that without donor budget support.
So much of your economy, though, has been agricultural based, and of course, there's been a tobacco decline. So looking ahead now, 4 years later, though, which sectors are driving your economy?
Agriculture certainly is one, education is one, health is one, and of course, infrastructure. Those are areas, and transport. Those are areas that definitely drive economy and are growing. We're importing more cars every year. The construction sector is booming now, and therefore creating jobs for both skilled but also unskilled workers. and also, in fact, creating opportunities for suppliers from the raw areas, supplying materials and so forth. So that's where we are, and those are the areas that we're emphasizing at the moment.
Right. How are you going about attracting the foreign direct investment? How are you creating investor confidence? Because looking back at your economy, it was not as robust when you took over. So what are you doing? What measures are in place?
Yeah, first of all, as I said earlier, we introduced a new system for make it easier for people to invest in this country and also to repatriate their profits. We have the Malawi Investment and Trade Center, where if you go and invest in one building, there's a revenue authority there, there's immigration authority, the lands department, all the areas that you need for an investment in one building. So we're doing that. But in addition to that, we have also created conditions. You see, Malawi is a small economy, obviously, 17 million people. But as you know, we're part of a larger economy, part of COMESA, SADC, now the African Free Trade Area, but also we have access to the American market under AGOA, and also the European market, and what they call EBA, everything but arms initiative. So they're huge markets. So investors know that if they come here, they have a huge market, but also have bilateral agreements with India, China, Japan, and others for duty-free sort of status. So we are doing that. So that's attracting investors. But also we have introduced new laws in this country. Investors know that if they come to this country, that first of all, there'll be security, fiscal security, both at home, at work, and in between. So we have done that, but also there will be commercial security, that their investment will be secure, their laws to protect it, no more expropriation and all the, creeping taxation and all those kinds of things. Those are things of the past. So the atmosphere is very ripe for investment, and investors are coming in now. This past year, we've had over $3 billion US dollars in investments, and mostly in agriculture, but also in education, in health, in transport, and so on and so forth.
You did talk earlier, though, about the Cashgate scandal, and obviously you're balancing your budget now using local resources, but at the same time, there's still a perception, though, of corruption. How is that working out? Where is the complementarity here? Is that affecting your local resources? Is that affecting your administration?
Well, I think there's always corruption, but maybe it's more a perception. There are resources. If there was such massive corruption that all the resources are taken away, there will not be money for us to do all these projects that we are doing in this country. The past 4 years, for example, we have built over 20,000 houses for poor people and so forth, and some of them with subsidized in the rural areas. So we have money to do that. We've added over 1,600 kilometers of tarmac roads. That will be the case by end of this year or early next year. At the moment, we have over 18 major road projects going on in the country. And I just got figures. Since 2014, we have established 290 projects, including road construction, hospitals, health centers, schools, teachers' houses, bridges, 290 projects. So the money is, we're using the money there. So if there was such massive corruption that all the money is being stolen, there will be no money left. However, there is corruption indeed at all levels, central government and also local authorities, but also in the private sector. And we have the Anti-Corruption Bureau. We have given the resources, we have strengthened it, and we make sure the director is independent. And also we have, of course, the Director of Public Prosecutions, where people can report if they theft. We have introduced a new whistleblower law to protect people. So we are doing all those things to fight corruption. It's a big battle. It's a big battle, but it's a collective battle that all of us together and the public, the government, and the private sector, faith community, trade unions, we all need to work together to combat this scourge.
Where is the investigation, though, in regard to the Cashgate scandal?
Right. Where is it?
Where is it? Yes.
Yeah, it's still going on. It's going on. I believe there are about 57 people who have been indicted, and there have been about 15 convictions so far. But it's very complicated because, you see, these things, there were conspiracies. It's hard to find where the money is. In some cases where some people use the money to buy buildings, those buildings have been confiscated. But the cash, whether it's here or was taken outside, is hard to trace. It was over $60 million over a 6-month period in 2013 when this happened. And so we're doing our best to prosecute all these cases. They're still going on. And I'm sure they'll be concluded in due course.
I'm in conversation with His Excellency Professor Peter Mutharika, the President of Malawi. Stay tuned. Talk Africa takes a short break now. We'll return in a moment. Don't go away.
China Global Television Network. From broadcast centers in Beijing, Washington, and Nairobi. A unique global perspective. 6 channels and a video content service. News when you want it and where you want it. On TV screens, websites, mobile platforms, and social media. CGTN. See the difference.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Welcome back to Talk Africa. Right, you are very optimistic, Your Excellency, that the country has rebounded over the last 4 years. But according to the IMF in 2017, though poverty levels in Malawi are still quite high, about 25% are still in extreme poverty, 57% living below the poverty line. So what are you doing exactly to end the cycle of poverty?
Yes, you're right. We have adopted a new Malawi Growth and Development Strategy 3. We just adopted it, and that has 5 priority areas: education, agriculture, power, energy, health, population, nutrition, and so forth. Now, that one way, I think, obviously, the country has to grow for poverty to go down. So we're doing that, bringing, as I said, private investors that bring in income and therefore employing more and more people. We just have an investment here in Longwe, a big business complex. An investor, at its peak, it will employ over 3,000 people. And also in other parts of the country, we have a lot of construction going on. And a lot of people are being employed, both skilled laborers, but also unskilled. But also have a cash transfer program, whereby people are given cash. Poor people, rural areas, families are given cash, and they can use part of that cash to send their kids to school, but part of it to earn a living. We also have a public works program where people do all sorts of jobs, construction, building roads and so forth, and other things, and are paid good wages. So that obviously also reduces poverty. So we're doing all these interventions, but the bottom line is that we need economic growth of about 7% a year over a sustained period, like we had around 2007, when Malawi was the fastest growing economy, only second to Qatar. If we reach 70% growth, then I think there will obviously be more income, more resources. It will trickle down, trickle down to poor people. But also by cutting down inflation, it means the prices stabilize, and therefore people are able to afford. We also the taxes. We don't tax now up to 50,000 kwacha a year, so there's money there that's saved for people, low-income people. So there are all sorts of interventions that we're undertaking, and we think they will work to reduce poverty. I quite agree, the level of poverty is unacceptable. It has got to go down.
Right, and you have also talked about embracing industrialization, though, as one way of ending the poverty cycle, not only in Malawi, but also across Africa. But to industrialize, African countries need efficient power supply.
Yes.
Your country is in dire need of that.
It is. It's in dire need of that because, as you know, the water levels have gone down. We depend on hydro, almost 100% hydro, and the water levels on Lake Malawi and the Shire River, where all the power stations has gone down. We're unable to pump now 40% of our capacity. So we're investing now in the power sector. First of all, in coal. We're negotiating with foreign investors very, very soon. I hope by the end of this year, I'll be able to commission a power plant, which will produce about 300 megawatts. We're doing that. But also we're going to solar energy. I'm told that by November, I'll be able to commission a plant which will bring about 70 megawatts. Also going into wind. We have over 40 investors in the power sector. We have now privatized or opened up the power sector. ESCOM, which was the Electricity Supply Commission, has not been unbundled. ESCOM is dealing with transmission and distribution, and we have a new company, Genco, which is dealing with generation. And now foreign investors can invest in generation. At the moment, we have over 40 applications we are processing, and one is ready to start. So indeed, the power is very important, and we're looking into that. If we have enough power, then we can go into mining, because there are a lot of minerals just discovered. But Malawi is very rich in minerals, niobium, rare earth, coal, gold, all sorts, bauxite. They're here, but we need power to extract those resources.
Right. I want to talk about your partnership with China and China's partnership with Africa here, which has been growing. Briefly first, can you assess for us the bilateral ties that you have with China, and what is your assessment of their impact in terms of bilateral, in terms of political, and in terms of the economic situations of your country, Malawi, and of...
No, I think Chinese investment has been extremely useful in this country. You have seen the parliament building as you were coming. That was built by the Chinese on a grant basis, but also one of the roads in the north. And there are a number of projects here, hotels, including one University of Science and Technology, which are built by Chinese on a concessional basis. And the other investors from China, this project I mentioned, the business park, which will employ 3,000 people, is by Chinese investors that are investing $100 million. It's already in progress. And also in Blantyre, we have another one there, about $50 million, and many others in roads, agriculture, and so forth. Cotton processing. So no, Chinese investment is very good, and we are also have access to Chinese market, to selling some of our tobacco there, and we hope to sell our soybeans and some of the legumes. We hope to sell those also to China. You see, if you're going to take advantage of the market that's in China or other places, we have to have something to sell there. You can't access a market if you have nothing to sell. So you must be able to produce something, either in raw form agriculture or processed form and market. So I think industrialization and value addition seems to be a big theme within Africa, within COMESA, within SADC and within the African trade area. And I think those are things that we are going to be emphasized.
China recently launched the Belt and Road initiative, though. How is that going to impact, in your view? How is that going to impact countries like Malawi, and how do you see that opening up the rest of Africa?
Yeah, again, I know Mr. Xi Jinping mentioned that quite emphatically in his major speech at BRICS. Again, the importance of transport and communication. So that's the impact here. I think take advantage of transport and communications. There are two keys, and of course also into ICT. I think that the key areas that can impact us here in Malawi. I know there's an investment, for example, here over my backbone, a project, phase 2, by one of the Chinese companies. So we want to get internet transport all over the country, so things can move and communication can take place. So those are the kinds of things that I think can bring about rapid growth over our economies, Malawi, but also Africa's economy. We need more penetration, I think, also infrastructure, ICT infrastructure, because that's part of infrastructure program. So we'll be also emphasizing that.
Right. How do you see this China-Africa partnership, though, growing? Because the summits like FOCAC will be held every 3 years. Now, how do you see the partnership growing, moving forward? What is it that you, as an African leader, as an African statesman, would like to see from China?
Yeah, the same. In the end, we'd like to see more and more investments, really. In fact, when we first went to China 2007, I was talking to Mr. Hu Jintao then. They're giving us 5 projects, and I was saying that next time we come back to China, I hope that instead of getting grants, we'll be getting investors. And he was very happy. And since then, there are a lot of investors in various sectors, in agriculture, irrigation, and so forth. We want them to do more investment. We want to go into irrigation in this country because of the shortage. These days, the rains are unpredictable. So we want to move away from rain-fed agriculture to irrigation. And the Chinese have shown interest in that. We have a massive project to irrigate over 40,000 hectares in Lower Shire. When completed, I understand it will be the biggest irrigation project in Southern Africa. So we'd like Chinese investors to come in, and other investors too, from other parts of the world. There is room for everybody. We'd like them to come in and invest, because we want to re-industrialize in agriculture, and then you can add value, and then export processed products, rather than exporting raw materials. We're trying to do that.
Right. Finally, Your Excellency, you're up for re-election next year. Looking back over the last 4 years and your agenda over the last 4 years, are you confident that could get you re-elected?
Yes, I am.
Excellency, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that's all we have time for this week on Talk Africa. But you can continue this conversation with us by following us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And do join us again next week for more Talk Africa. From the State Palace in Lilongwe, Malawi, I'm Beatrice Marshall. Bye-bye.